remember the year that my granddad died. Gonna rise again. They dug his grave on the mountainside. Gonna rise again. I was too young to understand the way he felt about the land, but I could read his history in his hands. Gonna rise again.
Kathy Mattea is a two-time Country Music Association Female Vocalist of the Year. But on her two most recent albums, Coal and Calling Me Home, Mattea celebrates the folk music of her native Appalachia. Previews editor John Mark Raffis speaks with Mattea about her journey through the music of the mountains. The West Virginia native discusses the songs she chose for Calling Me Home and how she wants them to convey a sense of place. She also talks about how the traditional music of Appalachia has changed the way she sings and thinks about her family history.
Why record an album of music, folk music from Appalachia, or as you would say, I'm sure Appalachia?
Well, this was a follow-up record to my last album, which was called Coal. That album kind of started it all and came about after a big mine disaster had happened. And I was just torn up about it, and I was shocked at how torn up I was about it. I'd randomly burst into tears for these people that I'd never met. And a friend of mine said, Kathy, this is what music is good for, processing emotions we don't always understand and, kind of getting us into our grief. And I thought, well, maybe that's what I'll do with all of this feeling that I have that I don't understand. I'll just make a record about coal mining and then I'll get it out of my system. And I thought it would be just this interesting side project, a little exploration of the history, and it just changed everything for me. I thought the songs would be sort of simple and kind of dark and a little boring, and, it all came to life, and it changed the way I think about my own family story and the way I think about singing songs and the way I was able to see how music can be used to help people remember history and heal and communicate with each other. I mean, it was amazing. And so it was like finding some new chunk of music that had been missing. And so I wanted to make this record as a deepening of that exploration.
In Calling Me Home, there are certainly some songs that deal with coal miners and the lives that they lead and the sort of love-hate relationship that the coal industry has for people in Appalachia. But Calling Me Home, you cover a lot more territory. How on earth did you narrow down your choices for what you would record?
What I wanted to sing about was a sense of place. I wanted to sing about that, and I wanted to celebrate that kind of relationship people have with the land there and highlight the beauty of it and the subtlety of what is lost when progress gets to be more important, and just sort of subtly bring up the question of how do we hold what's being lost and what's being gained both, and how do we make wise decisions about this stuff.
It struck me that there's a core of songwriters that you chose, all of whom are women. About 8 or 9 of the songs on the CD are by those 4 songwriters, and one of them is Jean Ritchie, who at this point I guess is the godmother of Appalachian folk music. And then sort of the next generation with Hazel Dickens and Alice Gerrard, who for a long time performed together, but you have songs written by both of them. And then Laurie Lewis, who I wasn't familiar with, and I see in my research was born actually in California, but is a wonderful bluegrass songwriter, and I would imagine musician and singer as well.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the choice of those women and what they mean to you.
Well, the first 2 songs that I started the album with were Jean songs, Now is the Cool of the Day and Black Waters. My sense is that as I'm looking for a record, as I start to focus on the next album, I start to sort of walk through my life with a sieve, kind of looking for songs and looking for themes and listening for, what resonates. And so having these 2 really strong songs that were both about the environment kind of gave me a point of view. And then, West Virginia mine disaster, I learned for a workshop that I was doing with Tim O'Brien at a bluegrass festival. We did all songs about West Virginia, and I I wanted to surprise him with some songs that he might not know that I knew. So I sang that, and it just stayed with me. I mean, it wouldn't leave me. The Maples Lament song of Laurie's, I have loved for many years, but it never seemed like something I could do or that would fit on a record. And I suddenly, somehow it came back into my field of vision, and I realized, oh my God, it fits perfectly on this record. Dawn Gonna Rise Again came out of a conversation with Cy Khan about what I wanted to sing about. And he's like, I got this old song. It might fit for you.
I had first heard Gone Gonna Rise Again from a folk singer in Chicago about 25 years ago. And when I heard the song, I didn't know who Cy Khan was. The name sounded kind of familiar, but it didn't necessarily ring a bell. And the song sounded to me like a real old-timey song. It sounded like something that was probably written in the 20s or 30s. And it wasn't until later that I discovered that it was written in the 1970s, and it wasn't until very recently that I discovered that Cy Khan spent the first 15 years of his life right here in State College.
That's right. Part of what I was sort of trying to do was to sing about Appalachian culture in Kentucky, in Virginia, in Tennessee, in Pennsylvania, in West Virginia. I tried hard to sort of, in a subtle way, consider all of it, not just West Virginia. And so I kind of checked that off my list when I found that song. And really it came out of a conversation. I was saying, I really want to try to sing about I want to take an environmentalist point of view, but instead of saying, don't destroy this, I want to celebrate what we want to save. I want to do it from the light, not from the darkness. And so he said, I got this old song. And we talked about how both of our grandparents were buried on top of a hill. And that's what you do in Appalachia. You bury them up high because the floods that come. And, we just started reminiscing about our common memories about that. And it really felt, when I sing that song, I think I'm aware of my grandparents' graves on top of the hill, but I put myself in Pennsylvania. It's funny, till you just said that, I didn't realize that. I mean, I have a little picture in my head of a place in Pennsylvania, and that's where I am when I sing that song.
The older songs here and songs like them, did they resonate with you when you were younger, or did it really take you to get to middle-aged for this to start having a deeper meaning?
That music was going like a screensaver in the background. I would hear it, but there was nobody to teach it to me. I messed around with bluegrass with a friend's family band. I'd sit in and play when I was young, but there was nobody to teach me the old songs. When I got to Nashville, I was 19 when I moved here, and I got a job at the Country Music Hall of Fame. And we had these old films of Jimmy Rogers and Merle Travis and Gene Autry and Bob Wills. And I started to get into more roots music. There was a film of Merle Travis singing Dark as a Dungeon. And I would go watch this film on my lunch hour every day. And I remember thinking, Merle Travis is singing about my grandfathers. This is what it was like for them. And it really made an impression on me. And I sort of filed that song away in the back of my mind. But it was vague. And it would surface every now and then. I would think, I want to make a record about something about home, or being from West Virginia, or being from the mountains, or something. But I couldn't get it to gel. And the Cole record was that.
That was the catalyst.
That finally showed its face.
Yeah. The late, great American playwright August Wilson liked to talk about something he called blood memory. I guess the concept is that even if you didn't personally experience it, if your ancestors did, it was sort of in your bloodline. So perhaps that's what, in part, this music was just in your system, in your DNA, and you didn't necessarily know about it until it started coming out.
It's funny you would say that, because I've always kind of rolled my eyes about that concept, although I've never heard the term blood memory. I think it's fantastic. But there are a couple of moments like that in my life. Like, I remember saying to Marty Stewart, who produced the Cole album, I said, Marty, some of these songs are just almost too easy to sing. And he said, that's because it's in your blood, pal. And there was another moment when Ken Burns made the Civil War series for PBS, he followed it up the next year with just a one-night special on the music of the Civil War. And I got to sing several songs in that. And there was an old song called The Vacant Chair that they gave me that was the most popular song on both sides in the Civil War. And when I came on TV singing that song, my mother and her sisters went crazy calling each other on the phone because my great-grandmother used to sing that song. And they all remembered.
That's a great memory.
So I do think there's something to that. And it's a mystery to me, but I've come to respect it.
Tickets are on sale for Kathy Mattea's concert, Calling Me Home, February 1st, 2013, at Penn State's Eisenhower Auditorium. Order online at www.cpa.psu.edu or by phone at 1-800-ARTS-TIX.